So good evening, everybody. Rachel, we haven't got an Imogen yet. I'm not sure quite where she is. But it is 7 o'clock. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the executive. I'm Councillor Prue Bray. I'm the leader, the deputy leader of the council, and I'm the executive member for Children's Services, and I'm chairing this meeting in Stephen's absence. Oops. Sorry, we're going to halt while we sort out that echo. Luciana needs to mute, does she? Yeah. Right. Okay, I think that seems okay, right? Stephen is absent this evening, and so I will be chairing this meeting. So there's a couple of bits of housekeeping first. Please can you ensure that any mobile devices or mobile phones are switched off? And if you're participating via Teams, when you're not speaking, please mute your microphones. And please also note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. I'm going to invite the members of the executive to introduce themselves, starting with Paul.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Paul Fishwick. I'm the executive member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways.
Good evening. I'm Ian Shenton, executive member for Environment, Sport and Leisure.
Lindsay Ferris, executive member for Planning and the Local Plan.
David Cornish, I'm the executive member for Business and Economic Development.
Good evening, Rachel Bishop Firth, executive member for Equalities, Inclusion and Fighting Poverty.
Thank you. We also have in attendance in the room Office of the Council to support the executive. And if I start over on my left, we've got Matt Pope, who's the Director of Adults, Executive Director of Adults, Children and Public Health. I think that's the right title, hopefully. George Romanico, who's Place and Growth. Sally Watkins, the Chief Operating Officer. And then we have behind me Priya Patel from Democratic Services, the Chief Executive of the Council, Susan Parsonage, and Andrew Moulton, who is the Monitoring Officer. And online we have Dave Allen, Director of Comms. We have Helen Watson from Children's Services. Okay, I think that's everybody. So I think we're ready to start, although I'm not sure quite what's happened to Imogen, and there's a bit of a disturbance out in the corridor, which I don't know what's going on, but we shall find out if anything's going to happen. Right, so the first item on the agenda is apologies, and the only apology I've got is Stephen Conway, who is away. Imogen is certainly intending to be here because she spoke to me at only 5:30 to confirm that she was. So I'm not quite sure what's happened to her, but we shall find out. Minutes of the previous meeting. So we're being asked to confirm the minutes of the executive meeting held on the 22nd of February. Is everybody happy with those minutes? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Nobody's made any minutes, so those are agreed. The next item is item 11105, which is declaration of interest. We actually have at least 2 declarations of interest this evening. I need to declare an interest in item 116, the Shareholders Committee, because I am currently one of the non-executive directors of 2 of the housing companies, WHL and Meadowbrook Homes. In fact, I'm the chair of both. David.
I also need to declare an interest in the same way for item 116. I'm a non-executive director of Loddon Homes and Woking Borough Holdings.
Oh yes, I forgot Woking Borough Holdings, which is not a housing company, so isn't directly affected. We will not speak or vote on those items, but we will remain in the room. There's no financial things associated with that. Item 106 is statement from the leader. Now, Stephen is not here, but he has supplied me with the kinds of things he would have liked to have said had he been here. So I will be making some remarks based on what Stephen's given me. So this is the last executive meeting of the municipal year, and we wanted to thank all the officers of the council all the members of the executive and in fact all councillors for their hard work and commitment to the borough over the last 10 months. And we see it as a period of considerable achievement, especially when it's viewed in the context of the financial challenges that all councils are facing at the moment. We're going to give you, Stephen's particularly asked me to highlight a few examples. One of the most important, although probably not the most prominent thing we've done, is the work on the community vision, which will shape the council strategy in the new council plan. And it's unusual because it's created by the community rather than the council. And it's a new participatory way of setting the council's priorities at a strategic level. We've also forged a new strategic partnership with the University of Reading, which will bring considerable benefits to people and businesses in the borough, not least to helping us with our climate emergency action plan, our economic development strategy, and our employment training and skills agenda. We've also been prominent in the formation of the new Berkshire Prosperity Board, which is a way of all the 6 unitaries in Berkshire getting together to help do bidding for external funding for key infrastructure projects. It'll give us a better chance of success than doing it by ourselves, and it will give us a stronger voice. We've developed a much greater sense of corporate ownership of challenges. Working corporately at a council has been really important to helping us meet some of those challenges, and we're now much less siloed and with much more joined up thinking. And to help with some of the challenges in, say, adults, social care and in housing, we're converting some of our own estate to accommodation for young people in danger of homelessness and care leavers. And we're thinking about how different areas of the council work together to achieve objectives. We've broadened our range of external partnerships and made some of those that already existed stronger, because that is the way when you've got limited resources to pool your expertise, knowledge and data to achieve the best you can in the most efficient way for everybody, and it will make the borough a better place to live and work in. And the final thing that I think I wanted to say is that we are focusing very much on prevention, early intervention, and investing now to save later, looking to the long term and not make short-term expedients our basis of decision making. A good example of that is our purchase of the new care home, which increases the provision in the borough but will help us control the future costs for the council. There's a lot more I could talk about, and he's given me a lot more I have to say. The COVID Memorial Wood, the new SEND schools that are coming, environmental sustainability, energy conservation that's going into the local plan, and something which we are delighted with, the contract with SSEN for the solar farm, which we will deal with later on. An awful lot of achievements since last May, which I think we should all be proud of. And as I say, we'd like to thank everybody involved with it, and particularly 2 members of the executive who will be standing down from the council in May. That's Ian Shenton and Lindsay Ferris. Lindsay has been a councillor on and off for many years, 16, yes, and Ian for a shorter period, but both have made their mark as members of the executive. We're extremely grateful to them for the last 2 years' work that they've done, and they will be missed. So thank you both, and I'm sure more will be said at next week's council meeting. You'll get your lives back after May, which will be good. Right. Public question time is the next item on the agenda. And we have one public question. Peter, would you like to come and ask it?
Yep. At the meeting of council on 19th of January 2023, I asked the executive member for active travel, transport and highways what was happening with the draft borough-wide parking management action plan. He told me that a pilot consultation on parking management had been conducted in December 2022, and that similar pilots and consultations were being rolled out elsewhere in the borough. He concluded by saying that this approach was a better way of understanding parking needs in different parts of the borough before moving on to a borough-wide approach, and that these would be developed in the course of the year. Could the executive member say how these pilots have progressed and how near the council is to integrating the findings into a borough-wide parking management action plan?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Peter, for your questions. COVID, as you know, has changed travel patterns across the borough, and with more people working from home, parking pressures in residential areas have increased. We are aware of the need to change our resident parking schemes and how we manage parking in areas with high demand for on-street parking. Residents have informed us that they would like on-street residents parking to work better for them, including by allowing them to park near their homes and allow provision for visitors. We are therefore working on a review of on-street parking and residents' parking arrangements in those high demand areas with the objective of making parking fairer for those who live in our towns. As a result, the council has switched focus from producing a borough-wide parking management action plan at this time to reviewing residential parking schemes in high demand areas across the borough. The Twyford pilot was the first area-wide approach to gathering information on parking issues. The outcomes from this demonstrated no one solution would resolve all the issues identified. Different roads and areas have different solutions. However, we will also continue to respond to residents' requests and issues on a location by location basis, and have introduced 3 scheduled legal traffic order amendments each year. I'm pleased to inform you that progress has been made with the Twyford and Hilltop areas, as well as many individual streets, which have all been advanced to amendment number 1 of the traffic regulation order, which was signed off earlier this year, with implementation during the spring.
Thank you, Peter. Do you have a supplementary?
That doesn't cover, the question is, what is happening about off-street parking in car parks? Is that going to be covered in any way, borough-wide way at all?
Off-street parking, we're currently monitoring on a month-by-month basis. It's not covered in any borough-wide parking management strategy at the moment. We're focusing on the on-street in those high demand areas. That's where the pressure is at the moment.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, so we move on to the first substantive agenda item, which is 109, the Affordable Housing Strategy 2024 to 2028, which starts on page 15 of the agenda, which is where the recommendations are. So this actually lies within Stephen's area of responsibility as the exec member for housing. It's been through rigorous scrutiny, which has led to some amendments. And I think that shows the value of our approach to overview and scrutiny and sending things there first to get a take on them before they come here, rather than have them called in afterwards. The housing team worked very hard on this strategy, and there've been quite a lot of helpful suggestions which have been incorporated. And the main focus of it is really looking at how we can get more genuinely affordable housing, where we find that people are priced out of being able to rent or purchase a home because the prices are so high. And we also, as highlighted in the report, require more temporary and specialist accommodation, which the strategy seeks to address. Does anybody have anything they want to say about it? Okay, Lindsay.
Yes. I've got a couple of pointers. Since 2006, despite the council having a 35% affordable home policy for new developments, only 23% of houses built over that period were affordable homes. So it is important that in future we must close this gap and increase the number of affordable homes in the borough. And I think that would be in line with increasing from 35 to 40% and maybe higher. The other issue I want to bring in is a particular area that I personally have concerns about. And there is one group of local residents that I feel need additional support, and that is for single people, and particularly those who are in the 25 to 50 age bracket, where it is difficult for them to get accommodation here locally. And I think we need to consider providing that appropriate facilities and types of housing and flats in this area.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, I do think it is important. I mean, you've highlighted that only getting 23%. Housing is becoming increasingly unaffordable for people, and so it's really important that this strategy works. To answer your point about single people, there are other groups, Overview and Scrutiny. Armed Forces veterans were mentioned because they sometimes have particular needs and are sometimes neglected as an area. And some of those come into that category of single people as well. Welcome, Imogen. Hello. Sorry. But strategic priority 1 is about continuing to address and understand our housing needs. And that comes into that, making sure that we're developing affordable housing which is suitable for the people who actually need it in the borough, and that covers all those range of people. So I think that's fine. The only point I would like to make as the exec member for Children's Services is recommendation 3 is about proposals to place care leavers into band 1 of the council's allocation policy. That's the decision we're being asked to make tonight, is not to do that, but to send that out for consultation. There's a process which requires to be gone through before it comes back to us in the summer. So the recommendations are on page 16. The 3 of them: supporting the strategy, removing the requirement for key workers to have lived in the borough for the previous 5 years. That's because we need to actually provide some housing for key workers before they've lived in the borough for 5 years. It doesn't work otherwise. And to consult on the proposals to put care leavers into band 1 of the council's allocation policy. Can I have a show of hands if you agree with that? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you. And then move on to the next item, which is very too many pieces of paper here. The young people's housing strategy, right? The young people's housing strategy, which has a very long subtitle about providing accommodation for our care leavers, 16 and 17-year-olds at risk of homelessness and unaccompanied asylum seeking children. And it has that very long subtitle because we couldn't think of another way, and everybody's tried, officers have tried, Overview and Scrutiny, Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny tried to think of a title that encapsulated what we need to do, because we cannot do a housing strategy for all young people. We have to focus on the ones in most need, and those are the groups that we think we can provide something for and most need to provide something for. So the strategy is very much focused on those groups. Is there anybody who wants to say anything about that? Not seeing anybody. No. Okay. Let me just turn to the right page. Page 29 has got the recommendations on it, which is that we recommend this to council to adopt it. So can I have a show of hands to agree to that? Thank you very much. That again is unanimous. Right, the next one starts on page 69, and this is the one to do with the Building Control Partnership. I do have to draw people's attention to a change to the recommendation. At the moment, it says it's a small change that we're asked to approve the council entering into the new shared service agreement for building control services. The amendment is to mention that it's for a 5-year period with an option to extend, but also the wrong Local Government Act is quoted in the recommendation. The correct one is that it should be section 9EA and 9EB of the Local Government Act 2000. And the rest of the recommendation remains the same. Is that clear to everybody? I think it's a technical point rather than a change to the recommendation, but we need to get it right. Okay, Lindsay, did you want to talk about this one?
Yes, thank you. I'm very pleased that this has come forward. We've had a partnership relationship with West Berkshire now for a 5-year period, and it has been working very well. And what we have here is the proposal to extend the proposal that we've had for 5 years for another 5 years, with the possibility of a period of extension. There are obviously, like all relationships, there's a break clause in there as well. And it is very important to note that the government had asked for the surveyors to have increased qualifications, and I'm very pleased to say that all the 5 permanent surveyors that are employed by Wokingham Borough Council have now received their written confirmation from the building safety regulator of their what's called the RBI registration. And that is very important, because without that registration, they would not be able to perform the building control role. We also have 2 supervising surveyors, and they've also received their technical registration as well. So we are in a very good position that we have got all of our surveyors to have the necessary qualifications so that we can carry on with this very important role. And I think that it is important to realise that whilst not all building control action is done by the council, there is a considerable percentage that is done. And we want to be able to make sure that residents who move into the borough have got the appropriate information regarding their property. So what I will say is that I would like to support the recommendation as amended, and that we agree to carry on the partnership arrangement we have with West Berkshire.
Thank you, Lindsay. Does anybody else have anything to say on that? I have one observation to make, which is that this paper is about 130 pages long, and that's because it's got the most comprehensive business case attached to it that I have ever seen. So it's a shame there's no Conservatives in the audience here to hear
yes,
that.
When we were putting this through, we wanted to make sure that we had it, because this is quite a complex issue. Reading Borough Council were interested at one time joining the partnership, but in the end pulled away. But I think it is better for us to work in partnership with another authority, as it enables us to have more surveyors and be able to do more things.
Yes, no, thank you. Right, so the recommendation is on page 69 in 2 parts. I've read out to you the change to the Local Government Act bit, and the other part is to give delegated authority to the Director of Place and Growth to finalise and sign the new agreement in consultation with the exec member for planning and local plan. So is everybody happy with that? Please show. Thank you very much. Again, unanimous. Thank you. Then
just one last point. I think West Parks are doing their partnership arrangement, I think, this evening as well.
Okay, right. So we're all in sync. That's excellent. So the next thing is on page 197 is the strategic asset review. Imogen, did you want to read off on this?
I thought you were going to introduce it.
Right, I will introduce it briefly. Yes, I have a few things to say, which Stephen has left me, because this falls within his again. So the report sets out the extent of the council's various assets in land and buildings, and considers how they can contribute to meeting the council's strategic objectives. This is the first part of a process. The report gives us a flavour of the possibilities, and I commend the report because it manages to corral a complex and complicated situation into something relatively short and succinct and easy to understand. So we're embarking on a review. We will have to strike a balance between the need to generate income and our other corporate objectives, like supporting the retail centres and helping voluntary and charitable sector partners and so on, and also cost reductions. And I think with that, we'll say over to you, Imogen. What would you like to say about it?
Well, really, yeah, I mean, the property portfolio as a whole, as you've said, it includes schools and leisure centres and libraries, as well as our retail and office space that we hold. And it's important that all of this works for our residents in the best that we can do. Our properties must be leased at a reasonable rental rate, and they must be used for something that is of value to the community. We do have a commercial property portfolio which we inherited, and it was funded by borrowed money, which has been very risky practice that's caused other councils to fall into significant debt. But as the opposition, we prevented the council from borrowing excessively, and certainly this portfolio is not making the money that it was promised to when we purchased it. It is, however, paying for itself and generating a small income for the council. So regularly reviewing this portfolio and examining the properties and their viability is actually quite an important process. Our retail properties, which are mainly in Wokingham town centre, I'm pleased to say are at least 97% of them are leased. Wokingham is clearly thriving as a town for some types of businesses anyway, despite being hit by the cost of living crisis. We also have smaller quantities of properties in Woodley and Twyford and Earley, which are all showing similar levels of utilisation. So under this Lib Dem administration, we've been investing in property. When we have been investing in property, it's for investor save schemes, such as the new Bluebell House care home that we purchased. This is being run by Opslist for Wokingham Borough Council, and it will enable us to reduce our care costs, so we are less dependent on private care providers, and we can be more confident that the staff and the residents are being well looked after. I'd like to note that when we inherited this administration, we had several buildings that were losing the council money, millions every year. We have stopped this by not allowing these properties to sit empty, and we've been using our charity partners who provide services to the most in need in the borough. While some say this is not generating the optimum income, it's better than that than hemorrhaging money like we were before. And it allows us to support these charities while at the same time we can work out what the best use of this space is. As you can see at the end of this report, we expect to make a saving of £570,000 from our property budget during this year and through rationalisation and disposal of some assets. There is room for improvement, but it looks like it will be a good year in this report. So.
Thank you. This has been to overview and scrutiny, to community and corporate overview and scrutiny. They made some recommendations which are on page 225, which are mainly about how it's reported, the progress is reported back to them, which I think is all fine. That's what we intend to do. I'll reiterate again, this is the start of a process, not the end of the process. So there'll be a lot of work ongoing over the next few years to make sure we've got the right not just the right properties, but the right principles on which we're going to examine them, which are laid out in the report. So there's 4 recommendations on page 197 to note the properties we've got, which are listed in the agenda, and the work that's ongoing, that we'll get a report back in due course, and that we consider what community and corporate said, which I think I've just done in there, that I'm very happy that they want to be kept abreast of developments on this, and I think we would all support that. Anybody else want to say anything about it? No. So recommendations on page 197. Can I have a show of hands to support them? Thank you very much. Brilliant. Unanimous. Brilliant. We move on to the next item, which is the statement of community involvement, item 113, which starts on page 227. And again, I think this is you, Lindsay.
Yes, now this is one of those documents that has to be updated every 5 years, and the time has come. This is the 5-year period, so that's the reason for this appearing at this particular time. There's one major change that's involved, and that is the extension of consultation period for major planning applications from the statutory requirement of 21 days up to 28 days. And the 28 days will take account of any holidays that take occur, bank holidays, etc. And I think this is very important because I know a number of parishes have indicated that they have a regular planning committee meeting, and often the consultation period comes out and they end up not being able to make their comments in time with 21 days. And I think that was one of the main reasons, and also to give the members of public a greater opportunity to comment, and it's specifically about major developments. And that, I think, is a very good step forward. All the other issues associated with it are as before, and I recommend the updated document to the executive.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to say? I mean, it's apart from welcoming that seems to be the only change to it, really. Paul?
Yeah, all I was going to say, I was going to make the same comment, actually. I'm very supportive of the recommendation to go from 21 days to 28 days on major developments. This is the main focus, I think, for town and parish councils, as well as residents, so they can focus on the most important sites in their area. And hopefully everyone will agree with that.
Excellent. I think I can see nodding around the table. Okay, I think we all agree with that. It's an improvement. Right. Can I see all those in favour of the recommendations on page 227? Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks. Right. So then we move on to something interestingly called responsible body status. So this is to do with biodiversity. It's on page 345, and Ian, I think it's over to you.
Yes, the government from the beginning of early this year has mandated developers to accompany their developments with a biodiversity net gain, and they envisage that being achieved by a market being created in biodiversity net gain units. We have already seen a report and agreed a report last year, which will ensure that the council itself can offer those biodiversity net gain units to developers, so that they aren't actually buying biodiversity net gain units outside the borough. Those areas which become biodiversity net gain units will actually be tied up for conservation for at least 30 years, and the payments received from the developers will pay for maintaining that. There is a further technical step to take, which is what this report is about, and that technical step is to obtain the official status of a responsible body from DEFRA. We apply to DEFRA, we are hopefully given the status of responsible body. That means that we can enter into conservation covenants with private landowners who want to put their land up for biodiversity net gain units to accompany developments. And Bracknell Forest have already made that application. You can't be the responsible body for your own biodiversity net gain unit, so it will enable us, for example, to offer to be the responsible body for some of Bracknell's and vice versa, if we get to that point. So this is really it's a technical step, but it's a fairly straightforward one. We apply to DEFRA, then we hopefully get the status and we enact it.
Okay.
There are no costs. It will cover itself, basically.
Right. Okay. So it's a fairly simple set of recommendations that the lucky director of place and growth gets to be the person who makes the application and then becomes a responsible body. So good luck with that, George. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? No, I think that's fairly straightforward. I think it's on the recommendations on page 340. Yes, go on, Rosie. Microphone.
It was the point, Ian, that you raised about where developers might want to put the net gain somewhere else. How will it work in practice to make sure that it does stay within the borough?
Well, we would obviously be able to offer to provide some of our own units for developers in this borough, and to prevent all those other net gain units being positioned elsewhere in the country, we can then encourage landowners, private landowners, to offer some of their land for conservation purposes too. And we could then enter into a conservation covenant with those landowners to look after it for the minimum of 30 years that is required to be a BNG unit.
Thank you. Anything else? No. Page 345, those two recommendations. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you very much. Okay. So that's agreed. So then we move on to item 115, the Barkham Solar Farm update, which starts on page 353. This is the one I think where Stephen would have loved to have been here, and not just for the affordable housing strategy, but for this one. I think the expression he used was to prove all the doubters wrong. We have actually succeeded in getting the solar farm on stream, getting an agreement with SSEN from 2026 and not the 2037 that at one point they said it would be. I think we've read some regrettable comments from one of our local MPs recently suggesting that we should give up this project and it's of no benefit to anybody and we should spend the money on something else. I would point out to him that I would not really want to forego not only the clean energy and the other environmental things that are mentioned in the report, but actually an income stream of what looks like it's going to be £3 million a year. Yes, so yeah, I think we are very pleased with this project. We didn't start it, the Conservatives started it. They've had a wobble, clearly, with their MP at least. And I'm very pleased to see that, thanks to our Chief Executive, who has put in an awful lot of work to persuade SSEN to make us one of the very few projects that got a start date earlier than 2037. And I'll hand over to David to talk more about it.
Thank you. Not very much more to say, in fact. For the record, as I've written it, we do indeed have full planning permission for the project, and following the, as you said, incredibly hard work done in terms of the engagement with SSE and the National Grid, we're now set to connect some point in the summer of 2026. The contractor's been appointed, the project's now progressing through the design stage, and we're looking for construction to start sometime in spring, summer of 25, so a year from now. I think we talked earlier on the asset review. It's worth pointing out the solar farm is being built on council-owned land, and this is a tremendous use for what will always be a very valuable asset. That's really good news. As you said, Prue, the latest figures are showing that over its lifetime, the farm could generate more than £68 million in profit over 25 years, and that's after the cost of delivering and running it taken into account. That's an income of £2.75 million a year on current figures, and that does help us to fund essential services and tackle the ongoing financial pressures that the council faces. And I think really importantly, while we are very proud and glad for the impact on Wokingham, it is another step towards making the whole country more self-sufficient in terms of energy. We've been struggling for years with government underfunding, and securing long-term income streams like this really is critical to our future. We've taken a cautious approach to the forecasting, but even with this, the latest figures do show that the solar farm is a really excellent investment for our community. And if I address one other point on a broader topic, the construction, as we say, will take place in about a year's time, and has been pointed out in a number of forums that there are a number of other construction projects happening in the same area, and therefore the leader of the council has already indicated that we will set up what is known for the time being as a project board to oversee all of the activity in that area of Barkham Ride, which includes some housing developments, but more importantly, the two SEND schools and the COVID Wood. The terms of reference for that have yet to be agreed. We look forward to doing that soon, but it will be set out with a basic objective of minimising the inconvenience to residents and maximising the communication. And I think we look forward to a whole series of very positive developments in that area.
Yes. Thank you. Dave, yes, Lindsay, please.
You got
No.
somebody else speak?
No, off you go.
I just wanted to say, David, that whilst it's brilliant that we're putting a project board together to deal with all the construction such, we've got to remember that this site would have had 270 houses under the previous administration.
Yes, indeed. Right, the recommendation, nobody else want to say anything? No, sure. Okay, this is a really good news one. The recommendations on page 353 to note the update. Consider the recommendations from Climate Emergency Overview and Scrutiny, which I haven't drawn attention to, so I've lost the page.
355.
355, thank you. Whoops, turn to that one. Right, so
353.
and they resolved that they note the progress and they're going to get further progress reports. That's absolutely fine. I know that Stephen went along and presented, didn't he? Yes. So we're back to 353 recommendations. Does anybody want to say anything else, or should we just vote?
Yeah.
So we vote to accept that. Thank you very much. Excellent. And then we go on to the last item, which is 116, the Shareholders Committee, which is the one that David and I have declared an interest in. So I'm not going to say anything about it, and we'll let Imogen introduce it.
Okay. I'll find it in my agenda again.
It's page 369.
Yeah, I'm going to be on my shareholders. There it is. Yeah. I quite like the fact that I'm getting to present this report because it's something that I've felt quite strongly about for some time in terms of how our wholly owned companies have been managed, in that they seem to lack oversight and how the councillors are integrated in with the committees. I have no relation to any of our wholly owned companies, so this is fine. In 2023, Wokingham Housing Limited commissioned an independent review of its governance arrangements. This was the Altair report, and it made many recommendations in its review of our local housing companies and assesses their overall governance arrangements. One example being Woking, as a nearby local authority that is effectively bankrupt. There were many reasons for its troubles, not to mention excessive amounts of borrowing. But one of the things that we learned from this is that the councillors and the council officers should not really sit on the boards of wholly owned companies. These board places need to be for experts in that business and should only act in the interests of that company. So one of the best practice recommendations from the report is to set up a shareholders committee that has a memorandum of agreement between these companies and the council. The details of these agreements are laid out in section 4 of this report. It is intended to have 5 members of this committee, which will include a member of the opposition, and the housing companies will report to this committee, but they will still maintain their independence. This is the best practice in the interest of openness and better governance, and this committee of councillors will be accountable to the public. As these companies are funded using public money, it will standardise and strengthen and consolidate their financial monitoring, which will be brought as a regular update to the shareholders committee, and it still allows us to maintain oversight. We are starting out with these housing companies, and in time we may include others, but these are Wokingham Housing Limited, Loddon Homes Limited, which is a regulated housing provider, and Berry Brook Homes. So they'll each have their own methods of operating. More details of these are in the reports, and if anyone is interested, but we need to agree the change and delegate the authority to our officers to set up this arrangement. So referring to the main report, which I should have on my screen, maybe.
Recommendations on page 369.
The recommendations are on 369, and I can't find them on my screen. I've got lost. But it's 4 items of recommendation. Does everybody agree?
Yeah, not me and David. Yes. You can't speak on it. Yeah, no,
David and Prue are on the boards
Yes.
of these companies, so they are exempt from this, but the rest of us are in agreement. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And that one has to also be put into the constitution, which will happen at council next week. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, it's coming to the council next week.
And that's because it's a committee of the executive and needs to, the establishment of that needs to go into the constitution. Right, okay, I don't have anything else, I don't think. That is the end of the agenda. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.